The high-profile gala was in full swing, the elegant venue glittering under the soft glow of crystal chandeliers. The air was thick with excitement and anticipation. Celebrities, business moguls, and political figures filled the space, their laughter and conversations weaving together into a symphony of luxury. Champagne glasses clinked, and the hum of soft jazz played in the background. The guests were draped in their finest attire, their conversations laced with whispers about the night's event. Everything seemed perfect, poised on the edge of something extraordinary. Suddenly, the grand doors to the ballroom swung open with a quiet thud, causing the energy in the room to shift immediately. The crowd paused. The music seemed to fade as two unmistakable figures walked in. Elon Musk, with his usual casual confidence, strolled into the room, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the electric anticipation that followed him. Behind him, Donald Trump entered, his larger-than-life presence demanding attention. He wore that familiar brash energy like a suit, bold, unyielding, and undeniably commanding. As they entered, the room seemed to hold its collective breath. The subtle elegance of the evening was suddenly replaced by a sharp, almost electric tension. People in the room turned to look, their eyes drawn toward the two men. Whispers began, rippling through the crowd as they took in the sight of Musk and Trump walking into the same space, both larger-than-life figures in their own right. The buzz of conversation quieted for a brief moment. Every eye seemed to follow them as they moved, each person wondering the same thing. What would happen next? The tension in the air was almost tangible. There was an undeniable force that followed both Musk and Trump. These were two men whose names carried weight, two powerful figures, both with their own vision of the future, both holding influence in their respective worlds. But as their paths converged in the room, the questions arose. Would they be cordial? Would there be a simple acknowledgement? Or would sparks fly? The room seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for the first sign of what might unfold. A few guests exchanged nervous glances. Some whispered to each other, their eyes darting between the two figures, already speculating about what could transpire. The media members, discreetly positioned at the edges of the room, were already on alert, their cameras at the ready, poised to capture any moment that might unfold between the two men. Every angle seemed important, every movement a potential headline. As the men made their way toward opposite sides of the room, the anticipation swelled. Musk's calm and composed presence was striking next to Trump's larger-than-life, bold energy. Musk's calculated steps were deliberate, while Trump seemed to move with the confidence of a man who knew he commanded attention. The contrast between them was stark. It was clear that this would be no ordinary evening. There was something more at stake here. The question loomed heavy in the air. Would they remain civil, or would there be an explosion of egos that set the tone for the rest of the night? The tension hung thick as all eyes in the room watched, waiting for the first sign of what might happen next. The room was still humming with energy when Elon Musk and Donald Trump found themselves near the bar, each surrounded by a circle of onlookers who were too polite to stare directly. The air between the two men seemed to crackle, thick with a tension no one dared to address. For a brief moment, they simply stood there, sizing each other up, an unspoken understanding settling between them, the kind of rivalry that didn't need to be announced. Elon Musk shifted slightly, his calm demeanor unwavering, as if unaffected by the undercurrent of anticipation that seemed to swirl around them. He extended his hand, his expression neutral, but his eyes sharp, calculating. Trump, his posture as stiff as ever, took the offered hand with a firm grip, his own expression giving nothing away. They stood there for a beat too long, neither making the first move to break the silence. The handshake, though formal, felt more like a contest of wills than a greeting. The room felt smaller now, the conversations fading into the background, as the onlookers watched this rare moment unfold. There was something about these two men, Musk, with his quiet genius, and Trump, with his loud, commanding presence, that seemed to make everything else in the room irrelevant. Every person nearby could sense the tension, even if they didn't understand it fully. So, Trump's voice broke the silence, booming as always. I've heard you're doing some great things with SpaceX. Impressive, but I think we're all waiting for when that'll actually mean something for the country. Mars is nice, but we need rockets that work here on Earth. Musk's lips curled slightly at the corner. Not quite a smile, but not a frown either. Well, you're right about the Earth part, but the technology we develop for Mars will change everything we know about travel, energy, and communication. It's not just about Mars. It's about solving problems for everyone. There was an edge to Musk's words, a quiet confidence that contrasted sharply with Trump's larger-than-life bravado. The two men circled each other like chess players, each waiting for the other to make the first mistake. Trump's eyes gleamed with the desire to dominate, his words cutting into Musk's calm explanation. Not to learn, but to challenge. That's fine, Elon, Trump countered, his tone dismissive. But a lot of your ideas seem to depend on people just waiting around for the future. People want results now, not in some distant dream. Musk's face remained an impassive mask, but there was a flicker of something behind his eyes, a quiet understanding of what Trump was doing. Trump, as always, needed to be seen as the alpha in the room, his forceful style clashing with Musk's more reserved approach. Musk responded with a slow nod, his voice measured but strong. I think what people really want is a future they can believe in, and sometimes that takes patience. The words were carefully chosen, calculated to disarm, but there was no doubt that the underlying power struggle was palpable. Each man, in his own way, was trying to assert dominance, trying to prove that their vision for the future was the right one. Musk was thinking strategically, keeping his responses measured, while Trump seemed eager to seize the moment, to take control of the conversation. It was a classic clash of egos, and it was clear that neither was willing to back down. The air was thick with unspoken challenge, and the uncertainty of what would happen next hung heavily between them. The room, though still, seemed to pulse with the knowledge that something significant was unfolding, whether they knew it or not. As the conversation between Elon Musk and Donald Trump began to heat up, the room around them seemed to mirror the rising tension. Their exchange was no longer a simple debate. It was turning into a power struggle, one where both men sought to assert their dominance. Musk, with his measured, thoughtful responses, clashed against Trump's larger-than-life bravado, and the crowd could feel the shift in the air. Every word felt like it carried weight, like it would either build a bridge or ignite a spark that could set the evening aflame. And then, almost unexpectedly, the atmosphere changed. Musk's eyes flicked across the room as he noticed a younger attendee standing nearby, clearly overwhelmed by the grandeur of the event and the intensity of the conversation. The young man shifted nervously from foot to foot, trying to stay out of the way. His anxiety was palpable, and Musk, ever perceptive, couldn't help but notice how out of place the young man seemed in this room full of the world's most powerful figures. Without missing a beat, Musk turned toward him. "Hey, come join us," he said with a calm, genuine smile, motioning for the young man to step forward. The crowd, which had been silent and focused on the escalating exchange between Musk and Trump, began to murmur. Musk's gesture, simple but undeniably kind, felt like a breath of fresh air in the charged atmosphere. It was as if he had lifted the weight of the conversation, redirecting the focus away from egos and toward something more human. Trump, caught off guard, looked at Musk for a brief moment, his brow furrowing as he processed the unexpected turn. His usual instinct to control the situation, to dominate, wavered. He glanced at the young man, then back at Musk, clearly unsure of how to react. There was a flicker of something in Trump's eyes, something soft, a small crack in the armor he always wore so confidently. He had been the one used to commanding attention, but here was Musk, offering the space to someone else, not for show, but for something genuine. After a brief pause, Trump surprised everyone, including himself. He offered a compliment to the young man, a rare gesture of kindness that felt out of place for the man who usually thrived on sharp rhetoric and grand statements. "You've got good taste," Trump said with a half-smile, his voice carrying a hint of sincerity. "Anyone who can hold their own in this room, with these conversations, deserves a little recognition." The room shifted, as if a collective sigh of relief was exhaled. The tension that had hung so thickly just moments ago began to dissipate, replaced by a softer energy. The people around them, who had been hanging on every word in fear of a confrontation, now found themselves caught off guard by the unexpected moment of connection. Musk's kindness and Trump's surprising vulnerability had shifted the tone, if only for a moment. The crowd, once on edge, now observed the two men with a different lens. This wasn't just a political or business encounter anymore. It was human. They weren't just titans of industry and politics. In this fleeting moment, they were two men, recognizing something in each other that went beyond the usual posturing. For Barron, watching from the corner, this unexpected exchange was a lesson, a reminder that even the most powerful figures were capable of breaking down the walls they had so carefully constructed. He couldn't help but feel a shift in his own perception of the world. There was strength, yes, in holding your ground, but there was also immense power in showing kindness. As the evening progressed, the lively chatter and soft jazz began to fade into the background. The moment of unexpected kindness between Musk and Trump had left a brief, palpable calm in the room. But as the drinks flowed and the conversations grew louder, an undercurrent of tension slowly crept back into the air. Trump, ever the provocateur, was the first to break the uneasy peace. He leaned in slightly, his voice carrying across the room, laced with that familiar tone of confidence that bordered on arrogance. "Space exploration, Elon," he began, his gaze narrowing as he focused on Musk. "It's all fine and dandy, but we need to make sure we're putting America first. Space is great, but what are we doing to push technological dominance here on Earth? The future isn't just in the stars, you know. It's in our country's power." The crowd seemed to tense collectively, their attention shifting back to the two men. Musk, his expression calm but his eyes flickering with a sharpness that hadn't been there before, responded. "You're right, Donald," he said, his tone measured, but with an undeniable undercurrent of challenge. "But the future isn't just about power. It's about survival. Mars isn't a luxury. It's a necessity. We need a backup plan for humanity. It's not just about winning on Earth. It's about ensuring we can survive beyond it." The words hung in the air, thick with unspoken defiance. What had been a civil exchange was now quickly turning into a fierce debate, both men's egos clashing, their visions for the future more like opposing forces than anything that could be reconciled. Musk's cool intelligence and far-reaching vision for Mars collided head-on with Trump's aggressive focus on America's immediate power and technological superiority. As the room watched, the temperature in the space seemed to rise. People instinctively gathered closer, their eyes fixed on the men who now stood as if locked in an invisible contest for dominance. The debate was no longer about Mars or technology. It had evolved into a full-scale confrontation of ideals, values, and ultimately, who held the superior vision. Neither man was willing to give an inch. The passion was raw, the stakes seemed high, and the tension thickened with every word exchanged. Trump, his voice now louder and more forceful, pressed on. "We've spent too long focusing on far-off dreams, Elon. The world needs leaders who will take charge right now. We need leaders who understand that our future, our country's future, is in the power we hold here. Why are we talking about Mars when we've got so much to do here?" Musk, unwavering, met Trump's gaze without flinching. "Because without a vision for the future, we don't have a future," Musk replied, his voice calm, but each word carrying the weight of his belief. "We can't wait for tomorrow's problems to overwhelm us today. What we build in space isn't just for us, it's for everyone." The room, once full of light laughter and soft murmurs, now held its breath. The audience could feel the raw emotions in the air, the fierce clash of ambition, the collision of two powerful forces. Musk's unshakable calm contrasted sharply with Trump's aggressive confidence. Each statement, each rebuttal, was a battle in itself, a tug of war between what each man believed the world needed. As the debate continued, it was clear that neither would concede. The energy between them was electric, charged with the raw intensity of their contrasting visions. There was no compromise on the horizon, only an escalating clash of egos and ideals, leaving the room in a state of uncertainty about where it would all lead. The debate between Elon Musk and Donald Trump had reached a boiling point. Words were now weapons, each carefully chosen and delivered with precision. The audience watched, spellbound, as the tension between the two men grew thicker. Musk's calm intelligence clashed with Trump's brash confidence, and it seemed as if there would be no resolution, just two titans locked in an endless struggle for dominance. But then, just as the atmosphere reached its peak, something unexpected happened. Musk, who had remained composed throughout the exchange, paused. His eyes flickered briefly toward Trump, and for the first time that evening, he took a small step back. His voice, when it came, was calm, almost soothing in contrast to the sharpness that had filled the room. "I think we've both made our points," Musk said, his tone measured but carrying a quiet weight. "And maybe we don't have to agree. Maybe the world needs both our visions. But I think we can at least agree on one thing. We're both trying to make the world a better place, in our own ways." There was a moment of stunned silence. The room, which had been holding its breath in anticipation of another verbal sparring match, seemed to pause as everyone waited to see how Trump would respond. Musk's suggestion wasn't an apology, nor was it a surrender. It was simply a recognition of the common ground that, despite their differences, they both shared, a desire to push the world forward. Trump, who had been leaning forward ready to deliver another sharp retort, stopped. He looked at Musk, his eyes narrowing for a moment as if processing the unexpected shift in the conversation. The crowd felt the intensity of the moment. Trump, the master of confrontation, was being offered an olive branch in the form of a toast. Without saying a word, Trump straightened up, his usual bravado softening just slightly. He nodded, a subtle movement that acknowledged Musk's gesture. The room was so quiet that even the soft clinking of glasses seemed like a distant echo. Musk raised his glass, his eyes meeting Trump's. For a brief second, there was no rivalry between them. There was no debate about space or power, no clash of ideologies. There was only a shared moment of respect, a recognition that despite their contrasting personalities and visions, both men had achieved something extraordinary in their own right. They weren't enemies, they were equals, albeit in different arenas. "Here's to the future," Musk said, his voice steady but filled with quiet sincerity. "To whatever comes next, no matter where it takes us." Trump, never one to back down from a challenge, but always eager to be seen as a force for unity, clinked his glass with Musk's. "To the future," he echoed, his voice softer than it had been all evening. The shift was palpable. The tension in the room, which had seemed so suffocating just moments before, evaporated. It wasn't a dramatic conclusion, no grand gesture of reconciliation. It was simply two men, acknowledging that their differences didn't diminish the power of their shared purpose. It was a quiet, emotional moment that spoke volumes. For those watching, it was a reminder that even the fiercest battles could lead to understanding. Musk and Trump, in their own way, had found common ground, not in agreement, but in respect, and the room, once filled with tension, now hummed with a sense of growth. The night had shifted, and so had they. As the gala began to wind down, the glitz and glamour of the evening slowly faded into the night. The soft hum of conversations and the clink of glasses had dwindled into the background, and the room, once electric with tension, now felt almost serene. Guests filtered out, making their way toward the exits. But for Elon Musk and Donald Trump, the evening wasn't quite over. They lingered in the quiet aftermath of their heated exchange, each man in his own private moment of reflection. Musk, standing by the window, looked out at the twinkling lights of the city below. His mind was quiet, almost meditative, as he replayed the night's events, the intense debate, the unexpected kindness, the surprising shift in energy. It had all unfolded so quickly. He had always known that his visions for the future were controversial, but tonight had reminded him of something important. Patience and understanding were just as valuable as innovation. The moment with Trump had been far from what he had expected. He had walked into the gala with one idea in mind, a chance to discuss ideas, to challenge assumptions, but he had walked out with something more. For the first time in a long while, Musk had been reminded that there was more than one path to progress. He had always prided himself on his ability to see the long term, to push through barriers that seemed insurmountable. But tonight, he realized that sometimes the greatest challenge wasn't the technology, it was the people who needed to believe in it. The realization hit him with a quiet strength. The world didn't just need bold ideas, it needed connection. Meanwhile, across the room, Trump stood near the bar, his eyes searching the crowd, though his mind was elsewhere. He hadn't expected the evening to unfold like this. The tension between him and Musk had been palpable, but somewhere in the course of their exchange, something had changed. He had always been the one to control the conversation, to dictate the narrative, but tonight, he had found himself in a rare moment of vulnerability. Musk's quiet acknowledgement, the unexpected gesture of kindness, had caught him off guard. He had been ready for a battle, prepared for a clash of egos, but instead, he had encountered a kind of respect he hadn't anticipated. Trump turned his attention back to the empty glass in his hand. For all his talk of dominance, there was something deeply satisfying about the realization that even the most opposing forces could find common ground. It wasn't about winning every argument. It was about understanding that some things were more important than who was right. The evening, though far from perfect, had reminded him of the value of collaboration, of mutual respect, even when it seemed unlikely. As the last guests made their way out, Musk and Trump found themselves alone in the grand hall. There, in the quiet solitude of the evening, they exchanged a glance, one that spoke volumes without a word being said. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. A silent understanding had passed between them. They were still worlds apart in many ways, their approaches to leadership and life as different as night and day. But for the first time, they both saw each other not as adversaries, but as two men driven by a common purpose, albeit on different paths. As the doors to the gala finally closed behind them, the world outside seemed to hold its breath. Musk and Trump, once locked in conflict, now walked in quiet recognition of each other's place in the world. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was enough. The night had ended not with fireworks or grand speeches, but with something far more powerful, a moment of connection. What do you think about the unexpected moments that can change a conversation, a perspective, or even a relationship? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about how small acts of kindness or surprising moments can shift even the most intense situations.